Sorry, could I have an answer to my question? I am concerned that we've got a pharmacy benefit manager here who competes with a bunch of America's pharmacies, and it's the one that is doing the pricing, and it's the one that's deciding who else the competition will be. That seems like, to me, a perfect way to be able to advantage yourself, disadvantage everyone else. And look, I'm not just making that up. I've got two pieces of evidence, $484 more per average that we're paying now on these generic drugs, and 13,000 pharmacies across this country that have just said, you won't pay me enough, so I've got to leave the entire system, which cuts down on service for our military members. And are you telling me, oh, you're thinking about it? You've had 20 years to think about this.
Elizabeth Warren unleashed a relentless line of questioning after accusing a top Pentagon official of dodging answers over military prescription drug contracts. What started as a policy discussion quickly turned into a tense accountability showdown over taxpayer money, pharmacy closures, and oversight failures.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Tricare pharmacy benefit helps 9 million service members, veterans, and their families access prescription drugs. Tricare's pharmacy contractor, Express Scripts, decides which pharmacies are included in the Tricare network and decides what they're going to get paid. And of course, Express Scripts is supposed to work for the DOD and for military families. That's what taxpayers pay Express Scripts to do. Except Express Scripts also runs its own pharmacy that participates in the Tricare network, a competitor to every other pharmacy. And that means that Express Scripts both provides pharmacy services to Tricare members directly and sets the reimbursement rates for itself and all of its competitors. That gives Express Scripts an incentive to under-reimburse all of the competing pharmacies and inflate its own payments. So, how is that deal working out for the taxpayers? Express Scripts reportedly charged DOD $484 more on average for generic drugs dispensed by the Express Scripts owned pharmacy. Meanwhile, Express Scripts has offered unaffiliated pharmacies such terrible terms that since 2022, nearly 13,000 retail pharmacies have just left the Tricare network. They've just said, we can't be part of this. So, Assistant Secretary Bass, you lead the Defense Health Agency, which oversees this contract that I'm talking about. Are you concerned that Express Scripts appears to be steering service members to the pharmacies that it owns and overcharging American taxpayers?
Thank you, Ranking Member Warren. Appreciate your support, and I understand that this is an important issue. The department continues to look at this and review, and as you're aware, this PBM is Tricare PBM is different than a normal PBM. It provides administrative services only, is a contract management mechanism for the departments. It does claims, mail order pharmacy, and is paid a fixed fee for each of the prescriptions. The Department of War controls their pricing and retains the cost savings. We understand the concerns, and we welcome the opportunity to work with you and your staff.
I'm sorry, could I have an answer to my question? I am concerned that we've got a pharmacy benefit manager here who competes with a bunch of America's pharmacies, and it's the one that is doing the pricing, and it's the one that's deciding who else the competition will be. That seems like, to me, a perfect way to be able to advantage yourself, disadvantage everyone else. And look, I'm not just making that up. I've got two pieces of evidence, $484 more per average that we're paying now on these generic drugs, and 13,000 pharmacies across this country that have just said, you won't pay me enough, so I've got to leave the entire system, which cuts down on service for our military members. And are you telling me, oh, you're thinking about it? You've had 20 years to think about this.
The department continues to evaluate this budget. It reviews and works with the contractor to ensure that it's within the guidelines of the contract.
Well, you're working with the contractor. How's that working out? How do you explain $484 on average more for prescription for generic drugs?
Thank you, Senator. I'm not aware of the cost discrepancy.
Okay, then how do you explain 13,000 pharmacies actually leaving the whole system? Just saying, you won't even pay me enough to make it worthwhile.
The contractor is meeting its contractual requirements.
Yeah, what? What are you saying about 13,000 pharmacies leaving this whole system, and they won't they can't fill prescriptions now for our military and for our veterans? You're okay with that?
No, ma'am. Our priority is to make sure all of our beneficiaries, the 9.6 million, get the coverage that they deserve and the benefits they deserve.
Well, I think they deserve a lot more than what you're delivering for them, and I want to know when you're going to get better at this. Look, what we're talking about here is a blatant conflict of interest. Our job in this Senate subcommittee is oversight. And that's why it is, for years now, I've been calling for more transparency to ensure that Express Scripts isn't favoring itself and its own subsidiaries and under-reimbursing the independent pharmacies in the hopes that it can drive them out of the Tricare business altogether and just have more of the business for themselves. I have been met with obstruction every step of the way from our own Department of Defense. So let me ask you another question, Secretary Bass. Will you disclose the differences between Tricare reimbursement rates and fees and other price concessions between what it's paying pharmacies and what it's paying itself?
Yeah, thank you, Ranking Member Warren. I commit to working with you and your staff in providing the data that
You'll give me that data.
I will work with you and your staff.
I'm going to hold you to that. So Express Scripts' pattern of bad behavior speaks for itself. In addition to the news reports that I've already mentioned, an audit by the Office of Inspector General for the Office of Personnel Management found that Express Scripts overcharged American Postal Workers Union and the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program by about $45 million. And the Government Accountability Office found, quote, persistent inconsistencies in the data that Express Scripts provided to DOD, which DOD is supposed to be validating on its own, but failed to catch. So, Secretary Bass, given the long history of infractions by Express Scripts that I just read to you, will you commit to annual audits of the Tricare pharmacy contract to ensure that taxpayer dollars are not being wasted?
I commit to, yes, I commit to doing annual review of the contract.
Good. And then will you let us see those annual audits?
I commit to working with you and your staff.
No, will you let us see them? I don't want to hear about them and hear your summary. I want to see the audits. Do I have that commitment?
I will work with you and your staff.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Good. Thank you. That wasn't so bad. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for running over. I just want to finish up by saying the current Tricare contract with Express Scripts expires in 2029, and DOD right now is in the acquisition planning phase for the next generation contract. As it builds the requirements for this new contract, DOD cannot continue to ignore this conflict of interest that arises when a company owns both a PBM, that is the one directing the payments, and a pharmacy. That has got to stop. And in the meantime, existing contracts should be regularly audited and subjected to much greater transparency to try to beat this kind of conflict out of the system. I look forward to working with DOD on this and serving the best interests of the 9 million American service members, veterans, and their families who are depending on us. Thank you. I appreciate it, Secretary Bass. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the extra time.
Elizabeth Warren came into this hearing with one clear goal: force Pentagon officials to explain why military families may be paying more for prescription drugs while independent pharmacies are leaving the Tricare network in massive numbers. From the opening moments, Warren framed the issue as a serious conflict of interest involving Express Scripts, the company overseeing Tricare pharmacy benefits while also operating its own pharmacy services. That set the tone for an increasingly tense exchange centered on accountability and transparency. The most striking moment came when Warren repeatedly tried to get a direct answer from Assistant Secretary Bass about whether the Department of Defense was concerned about reports showing Express Scripts charging significantly higher prices for generic drugs. Instead of a straightforward response, Bass gave long procedural explanations about administrative systems and contract structures. Warren immediately pushed back, interrupting with the now viral line, "I'm sorry, can I have an answer to my question?" That moment captured the frustration many lawmakers and viewers feel when officials appear to avoid giving direct answers during oversight hearings. Warren then escalated the pressure by pointing to two major concerns. Reports that taxpayers were paying hundreds of dollars more on average for certain prescriptions and the fact that nearly 13,000 pharmacies had reportedly left the Tricare network since 2022. She argued that these departures reduce access for service members, veterans, and military families across the country. The exchange became less about technical contract language and more about whether the Pentagon had done enough to protect military families from potential abuses inside the system. As the hearing continued, Warren sharpened her focus on oversight failures. She accused the Department of Defense of obstructing transparency efforts and failing to properly audit the contract despite years of warnings and investigations. Bass attempted to reassure the committee by promising cooperation and annual reviews, but Warren kept pressing for firm commitments, repeatedly demanding public access to audits and reimbursement data. Her persistence eventually forced the official into a direct yes commitment on sharing future audit information. By the end of the hearing, Warren transformed what could have been a dry policy discussion into a high-pressure accountability moment. The exchange resonated because it touched on issues that affect millions of Americans: healthcare costs, government oversight, and trust in major contractors handling taxpayer money. Whether viewers agreed with Warren or not, the hearing delivered a revealing look at how difficult it can be to get direct answers from government officials when billions of dollars and critical healthcare services are on the line.